Welcome to the DIY Writer Podcast. Today, I have a gentleman who has published 8 books, 1 comic book, and has written 10 plays, 2 of which have been produced. He's also a university professor, an U.S. Army vet, and a psychic. One of the interesting things about this gentleman is he also teaches a paranormal personal history course through a college. I would like to introduce Dr. Bruce Olav Solheim. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you, Jeff.
So we were talking a little bit before we started recording this, and we're talking about this new play that you have coming out. Can you start off by telling us about it?
Yeah, sure. It's called Tough Trip Through Hell, and it's a dramatic comedy Western, and it's what we call a play stream or a screenplay. And what that means is that it's part theatrical play, part movie, part serial TV show. But it's live. So we've created this 3D world, in this case, 1866, Virginia City, Montana. I know we talked about Montana before the show too, so this is kind of interesting. Virginia City, Montana, 1866. And the story, it's really just a story of how a Civil War veteran comes to the town looking for gold, looking for his missing wife, and ends up meeting this runaway slave who's become an entrepreneur in the town. And of course, there's villains. You know, there's real life characters. You know, like Sheriff Plummer, Henry Plummer, who actually was a sheriff in Virginia City at that time. And Calamity Jane shows up. And there's a mention of Wild Bill Hickok, but he doesn't show up. He's just kind of in the background.
Okay.
And I made it very theatrical too. I've added a Greek chorus into it, so there's a little bit of singing. It's a very interesting story. There's very dramatic moments, very sad moments, and also comedy throughout. So it should be pretty interesting. It starts Wednesday, October 28th at 7 p.m. Pacific on Facebook Live and YouTube Live and Twitch, which is something I just learned about. I thought it was just an ailment that I had, but apparently it's a social media thing.
Twitch is pretty awesome. Yeah, it's a live TV.
I've heard it's pretty cool. So anyway, so all 3 of those venues will be produced, and then it'll be like an episodic. It'll be episode 1 through 5. We'll do it every week until we're done with it. So it's based on an unpublished novel by a friend of mine, David A. Willson, who is a Vietnam vet and unfortunately is in the final stages of cancer related to Agent Orange exposure. So there's like this big move for us to get this done for David so he can see it before he passes on. And he's hanging in there, and he's very happy that we're doing this. And yeah, it's a really cool thing. We got some Hollywood actors that weren't doing anything at the time, but now they're picking up, you know, like Rico E. Anderson. He's in a lot of TV shows. He's one of our stars in the show. So I was very lucky to get these very talented people. But the cool thing about it is that it's kind of like it's live, and you're kind of like in a video game, because our technical director has created a 3D world for us to see. So when you'll see the characters, and you'll see actually Virginia City, Montana in 1866. He's created that world. And so it's pretty amazing. This is the 3rd screenplay that we've done as part of Lockdown Theater. We started it when the lockdown started, so put all these people to work. So that's what we're doing. And so from a writing perspective, it was pretty challenging, because you have to figure out how to do a horse race, how to do an ox auction, how to do a lot of stunts and stuff. How do you do it live and in remote locations online? I mean, it had so many technical challenges, but we've been able to pull it off. And also from a writing perspective, I had to adapt the unpublished novel into a theatrical play, which was not easy to do, because a novel, of course, is in your head, whereas a play is out there, on a stage usually. So it was very difficult to do that, but we're quite pleased with it. So yeah, it's one of the many projects that I'm doing, and that's just the most recent one right now that's going on right now.
So I will get the links from you and drop them in the in the show description. Cool. But if somebody's going to search for it, they're going to search for Lockdown Theater.
Yeah, you can look up Lockdown Theater. You can look up Tough Trip Through Hell, and you'll get there on Facebook or YouTube, and it'll be on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and Twitch, and starting Wednesday the 28th at 7 p.m. Pacific, and in 5 successive weeks, as an kind of like old episodic live television in that respect.
This sounds really cool. So, I mean, kind of describe the process of, how the, creating these 3D backgrounds for people. I assume that they're going to be recording on a green screen, and then it's going to be.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. It's a green screen. So, as the executive producer, I had to make sure each actor had the lighting set up at their home and the green screen. So, it was a pretty big challenge, and then teach them how to do it, because usually an actor shows up, all that stuff is done for you, the lighting, the sound, everything. But we had to work with them, teach them how to do all that stuff, teach myself how to do all that stuff. And the thing that drives it, that makes the 3D set, if you will, is called Unreal Engine. And it's the same thing they use for video game, gamers use it to create their gaming worlds, which are pretty sophisticated. Like when my son is playing a game in the living room, like a baseball game, I have to ask him, is that the playoffs? Or is it, no, Dad, it's a game. It's so realistic. I can't believe it. It's amazing. But this thing is called Unreal Engine, and our technical director has been able to create a background and different camera angles. So you'll see the character acting live on a green screen, and it'll look like he's moving around, because it's actually the set that's moving.
Sure.
Unlike a play where the set is set, it's actually moving. So I'm not a real technical person, but that's the best way I can describe it, where you are going to be immersed in that world. Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
My first question is, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that can go wrong with this. But in I mean, it's just like, wow, this is really complicated, but it's totally cool. So my first question is, in practicing it, how did you coach the actors to actually, okay, now you're going to be looking at an oxen, now you're going to be, looking, this direction over here. I mean, do you have those prompts written down in your screenplay?
Well, we have a technical script as well, that the guy who designed the sets worked with me, and the audio people and the director. And we've taught through technical rehearsals, we've taught the actors he actually had, like these dummy figures on the screen, and he could see which angle they were. So their blocking is based on how these dummies are placed on the screen. So then they just replace those dummies. And when we do the performance, the dummies go away, and it's the live actor that's in its place. So it'll be like, okay, your blocking is 45 degrees stage right, and you're looking at the horse, so you're looking at this other character. And it's been a lot of work. It's a heavy workload for the actors too.
Oh, I bet. I mean, you've got some very talented actors on this. I mean, some people that obviously the fans will recognize from other shows and stuff like that. But this is a new thing that's kind of emerged during the whole pandemic and everything else. And we're kind of on the leading edge of it. I'm not bragging. It's the technical director that's created this, but for our benefit, but nobody else is doing it. I mean, there are other people doing live stream type, but it's usually, like we're in squares, we're in, the Zoom land, right? Yeah. Or different ones. But this is a set, a movie screen, and you're seeing the actors live in this setting. So it's well beyond that. And we're on the leading edge right now, but there's other people that'll catch, when they see it, they're going to go, okay, yeah, we're going to do that too. So it's kind of cool to be on the leading edge, but it's kind of nervous, it makes you nervous too, because other people, okay, yeah, I'm going to throw $100,000 or $1 million at this, and we're going to make it work, because it doesn't seem like the lockdowns are going to go away, or the COVID-19. So we got to do something. We got to be creative, and all of our actors are in remote locations, and so it's pretty wild when you think about it. I had no idea that the first production we did was basically a Zoom production but we had some fancy angles and stuff. But
And the second one, we experimented with the Unreal Engine, but it wasn't a moving set. It was a stationary set. And this one, we have, I think, oh, I don't know, like 10 different locations, 10 different sets that we're working with at least. Everything from a snake pit to a horse race to a inside of a livery stable. It's a Wild West shootout. On the main street. There's all this stuff going on. It's pretty cool.
Hearing about this, it is incredible. I mean, my mind's just kind of racing. How'd you do this? How'd you do that?
Yeah.
In the amount of work it would take. I mean, especially being remote to get to pull this off, kudos to you, number one, and number two, hell yeah, brag about it, because this is awesome.
I'm really bragging on the part of the people working with me. I mean, yeah, okay, I adapted the book, and I've been working with them and learning. But man, it's just these talented, younger people that are just. There's no limitation. Really, what this shows you is that you or anybody who's a creative person, you can put your story anywhere in the universe. I mean, they can create anything and put your actors, live actors, or if you wanted to do it like a film, you don't even have to be on location anywhere. You could, think how much money that could save by making it that realistic and make it live or record it, and not have to have your actors be on set somewhere in Tunisia or something. We can create Tunisia.
So what did it take to actually put all this together? I mean, so did you look through each scene and say, okay, this is not right. I want this building to look this way. My intention was, because you're taking this novel and you're adapting it to a play.
Mm-hmm.
And so the sets, are those your vision, or did you hand that over to your technical director and say, just make them, or how's that whole collaboration work?
Yeah, he took the what essentially became like a screenplay. It was a theatrical play. I turned it into a screenplay, and then we had he created frames, like you would in almost like a comic book,
Yeah.
And okay, this is how we're going to do it. And then they went to town. At that point, I was just, man, I can't believe what they're doing. They're creating this stuff. And I planted the seed, but then they made this garden. It's pretty amazing what they've created. And I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a lot of people when they see this that want to create something similar are going to be, trying to get those guys to work for them, to do something for them. And that's what I'm hoping. That was really, I'm nearing retirement, and I did this really for my friend David. And I'm hoping that the actors and the technical people and the director and the music director, all those people get gigs from this. That's really my goal, is to be on the leading edge, to present this story, and to really kick something off and give them a big push out into the world where people will want them to work on their stuff. So that's really what I'm hoping for.
This is your screenplay and your adaptation of this novel, but can we talk about David a little bit?
Sure.
This is his novel. This is what he put his sweat, blood, and tears into.
Yeah.
And also I'd like to know if there's some place that somebody would feel like maybe donating to him, or if there's any kind of a crowdfunding or anything for him, or is it just kind of?
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. David A. Willson is a dear friend of mine. I've been friends with him since 1994. He's a mentor. He is my writing mentor. He has published a series of novels about his experiences in Vietnam. He was the guy who did the REMF series, REMF, which I don't know if I can say what it stands for on the show or not.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. It's in the military, we have a term called REMF. It means rear echelon motherfucker. So, and that he was a clerk typist for General Westmoreland in MACV headquarters in Saigon during the war in 1967-68. So his most serious injury was a paper cut. He was a typist. That's what he always says. But unfortunately, he took showers in the barracks where they had the water in these 55-gallon drums heating during the day, and then they just had this gravity-fed shower.
Right.
Unfortunately, those drums had been previously filled with Agent Orange.
Oh,
So
no.
he was every night showering in Agent Orange. And when he went to the mess hall, he drank Kool-Aid that was made with the water from the local creek, which was, inundated with agent. So that's how he got the multiple myeloma, this blood cancer, from that exposure, as so many Vietnam vets have. And David has been struggling with this for, over 8 years, I think 9 years. And he's out-survived every other person who was diagnosed at the same time at the VA. So he's been under VA treatment for that long. He's a survivor, he really is. But he's in the final stages now. He can't correspond with me anymore. I correspond and his wife answers for him and that type of thing. So he is looking forward to seeing the play. But he wrote this REMF series, so he's well known in the Vietnam literature community. And he's been a dear friend and a writing mentor to me. I think the best way people can show their support for David is to watch the play and appreciate his work, because it really is him. I mean, the story is him. It's actually his great grandfather that was a real person in Virginia City, Samuel Willson. So one of the main characters is Samuel Willson. That's his great, I can't remember how many greats it was, but that was his relative. So it's based on that. Cool. And then there's other historical characters as well.
Well, I think
so that's the best way I can think of, is just if they want to show him love by watching the show and say, David, that would mean so much to him, for them, because there's no way they can buy the book or anything. But if they watch the show and say, hey man, this was great, and David had a great story, that would mean the world to him. It really would.
I can think of one other way that you can support him, and that would be, when we're done with this, if you could give me the links to his books, I'll put those out there, and they could also, buy his books on the Vietnam saga.
Yes, some of them are out of print, but I will send you the information on all of that.
Yeah,
yes.
If you would, I mean, at the very least, maybe they can go to a library and pick them up if they're still.
Yes.
Something.
Yeah,
like that.
And they're all good reads. In fact, I've adapted another couple of his Vietnam books into another play that hopefully someday we'll produce. But I will do that. I'll send them to you.
What was his name again?
David A. Willson, and it's Willson with 2 L's.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's an unusual spelling. He says it has 2 L's, and I'm fond of both of them. That's what he always says.
Well, this is totally cool, and what a wonderful way to, create a tribute to him.
Yeah, I mean, it's the least I can do. I mean, I wouldn't be a writer if it wasn't for David. He inspired me, and for a lot of writers, it's there's a lot of people who could probably be decent writers, but they feel like, oh, nobody's interested in what I'm going to say, or how do you do it, And David he taught me from the ground up, and not being afraid. And really, you get rewarded for writing when you take risks, and that's what it's about. If you try to be too careful and do all this, well, people want to read romance novels, so I'm going to write it. What if your heart's not in it? Nobody's going to read it.
Exactly.
They want to see that sacrifice. They want to see blood spilled on the page. Literally, you're pouring your heart into this thing, whatever it is, whatever genre it is. So that's what David taught me, and that's what he did. And has done. So,
well, you're no slouch either. I mean, you've got 8 books.
I've written, mostly history books.
Yeah.
But I've kind of taken a turn recently. I've done some paranormal books, the Timeless series, and that's a whole other story in and of itself. I go in many different tracks, but it's all related to creativity and writing, and whether it's comic books or plays or these paranormal books. But the paranormal books, the Timeless series, Timeless Deja Vu, and Timeless Trinity, are based on my paranormal experiences, my personal paranormal experiences that I've had since age 4. And I was afraid to write about them because I'm an academic, and every other book I'd written before that had been a standard history book, whether it's the Vietnam War, women leaders, international relations. It's always something heavy, academic kind of stuff. A textbook, So this was quite a departure, and it really started because a friend of mine died in September 2016. My friend Gene, childhood friend, also Norwegian American. You know, his parents were Norwegians, immigrants. And when he died, I had a vision of him. And this is not unusual for me. I've had this since I was a kid. I see people, I see dead people, in other words, and I talk to them, which is weird to say. And I was afraid to say that before Gene came to me in that vision and said, it's now time for you to tell your stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I was like arguing with him in this vision. You know, I said, well, Gene, you know, I'm going to lose my job. People aren't going to take me seriously as a professor. And he goes, don't worry about that. And so then I asked him a question that anybody who was talking to a person, you know, is deceased, you know, what's it like to be dead? I asked him that. I just said,
sure.
And he laughed and he said, well, you know, I'm talking to you, right? And I said, yeah. He said, so obviously I'm not dead in the sense that you think a lot of people think. And I said, no, but where are you? He said, well, I can tell you this, that where I am, there is no past, there's no future. It's just the eternal now. It's just all now. That's it. There's no passage of time at all. And so I said, okay, I'll tell these stories. I'm going to do it. And then he said, he mentioned the word timeless. He said, we're timeless. He said, you have to remember we're timeless. And I said, wow, that's a great name for the books, Timeless. So he came up, my friend who had passed away a month before this vision, gave me the idea and gave me the nudge and even the title of the book. So then I just went to town and I wrote the trilogy, you know, these 3 books, everything from ghost stories, you know, ghost apparitional experiences, demonic kind of scary, really scary stuff, telepathy, telekinesis, alien contact. I mean, you name it, it's in there. And each book got successively more kind of out there. The first book, I kind of tested the waters. I didn't want to go too far. And then I had a good reaction. Nobody at the college wanted me fired. My colleagues didn't laugh me out of town. So I thought, okay. In fact, a lot of them came up to me and said, yeah, I got to tell you about this ghost experience I had. So there's a lot of people who've had experiences, but they don't really have a safe place to talk about it.
Sure.
Especially at a workplace, like, you know, where you're an academic. And then the second book went a little bit further. And the third book, as I say, I just let it all hang out.
Mm-hmm.
So 89 different stories in those 3 books, and there's been very good reaction from it. And I figured as long as I had a good reaction, why not go one step further and see if I can teach a paranormal course?
Mm-hmm.
So I called it Paranormal Personal History. So I'm combining my historical background, history teaching background, with the paranormal. And so I decided to offer it, thinking that the college is never going to accept it. They're never, I mean, yeah, they accept I've written these books, but they're probably not going to let me teach a course. I was wrong. Yeah. So obviously there is a hunger for this. And I found out that there's very few paranormal courses being taught at colleges around the United States. I thought there would be more, but there's very few. I think there's less than a dozen colleges that are offering them. And so it's been well attended. Of course, now we're all online, so we're going to do it in the spring online. But people, the main reason people take these courses is because they want a safe place to tell their stories, and they want to get some kind of theoretical framework behind it. You know, like, what does it mean?
Mm-hmm.
How could this happen? How could these ghosts be floating around? You know, what is going on? And so that's what we do in this course. I bring in guest speakers, everybody from members of the clergy to magicians to who will teach us, you know, their stage magic, and then talk about real magic versus stage magic. I've brought in hypnotherapists who hypnotize people and take them back to past lives. And I have a spoon bender lady who can bend spoons with her mind, you know, kind of like Uri Geller back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
She's coming in the spring. So a Ouija board specialist, although I don't like Ouija boards, that person's coming in, is going to do a live Ouija board thing. So we have a lot of fun in that class, and people love it. And it's you know, I have elderly people in their 80s, and I have young people in their 20s taking the class. They all have one thing in common: they want to learn more, and they want a safe place to talk about it. So it's been very popular.
So is this like an extension class type
It's community ed, so it's not
Community
for
ed?
credit.
Okay.
Yeah. I probably could push through a credit class if I wanted to, but at this point in my career, nearing retirement, I don't want to go through all the headaches of curriculum committees, trying to justify my ghost experience, I don't know.
Right.
It
Oh,
just,
yeah.
so they allowed me to do the community ed, which it's under the aegis of the college, offered through the college. So I figure that's good enough. And most people don't want to, they don't want to pay for, they want to pay the community ed fee, but they don't want to have to, take exams and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's what I say at first day. I say the coolest thing about this class is that you don't have to take any quizzes or exams, no papers. So it's all just talking and learning, really, is what it is. And so I've had a lot of fun with the class, and we've had great experiences. And I try to bring in many different, I've had skeptics in the class too. I like skeptics. A lot of people that are paranormal people, they say, they stay away from, I like skeptics because I'm a little skeptical myself sometimes. It's like, wait a second, how can this be? And then something happens and I go, oh, that's why it's happening. Okay. And so it's just a natural, I think it's a healthy thing to be a little skeptical of this. In fact, my wife is skeptical.
Yeah.
And I will tell her, she's very supportive, but she is somewhat skeptical. So when I tell her something fantastic has happened, she goes, that's really cool, but can you help me out in the garden? Because I need to dig a hole and you got to get a shovel. And okay. So then it brings me right back to earth again. And I'm not always in this ethereal realm. I come right back to earth, and she helps ground me. I think it would be really bad if I was married to a psychic person. It would just never, leave that world, and that's not good.
So
be too much.
What's the most interesting thing you've heard from somebody from far beyond?
Well, there's funny things and there's kind of serious things. I'll tell you a funny thing. I was being tested by a TV producer who wanted to do a documentary, and he heard me on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, and he flew me and my wife out to Chicago to test me. He took me to different sites, haunted sites, and where terrible things had happened and so forth. Didn't give me any clue what was going on there. So he just took me there and tried to see what I could pick up on. Well, this one place he took me to was this old graveyard in this old country road. And I picked up on a few things, and I was in the graveyard. And sometimes when I'm in graveyards, I'll hear, the departed say something. Well, it was like below zero. It was like 5 degrees below zero in Chicago. We were there in January of 2019, right? So I was walking through the graveyard, and he was filming me, and I heard this voice say, I had just complained to the guy. I said, man, this is so cold. I can't believe how cold it is. And then I heard this voice that said, you think you're cold, you should try being dead. And I thought, that is a great line. That's funny. So people in the beyond, they can be funny. They can be very funny and make, it's kind of smart ass comments like that. It can also be a very scary kind of thing. When I first started doing mediumship, not just random frequent stuff that had happened throughout my life, but actually do it, like try to make it happen, get my radar dish up there, as I call it. There was like a flood of entities wanting to talk to me. And it's like being in a crowded room and everybody's talking at once. And I soon learned that you can't do that. You can't, because, I think what it is that folks in the beyond, they're looking for people who they can talk to. And most people, they can't, they could talk to a person all day long. They're not going to hear them. But they'll see one person who has the psychic, gift or whatever, and they'll all rush to that person. It's kind of like you have a big light on top of your head that says open for business, So they rush to you. So I quickly learned I had to have protection. I had to have like I call them bouncers, like in an exclusive club, So I have 2 spirit guides that help me, and I pray, I'm a spiritual person, so I pray before I do this, and for protection. And then they only allow in the people that are safe, because you never know. There's a lot of stuff out there. Some of it's not really that harmful. It's just people wanting to communicate, and other entities are very harmful. And I've had that experience too when I wasn't careful. So it's sometimes you hear a voice in your head. Sometimes I see writing. Sometimes I see symbols, like they'll show me something.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's different ways of communicating. The one thing I do know is that it's very difficult for them to communicate. It's almost as if you and I were talking and you were like we were on opposite ends of a chasm or something, across a great chasm, and you were way over there, maybe a half a mile away, and you're trying to, maybe I can kind of hear what you're saying, but it's very difficult to communicate. It's very difficult. You might, or it's like an old radio where you can't quite get the tuning right. You hear a little static and you hear every other word. So it can be like that too. So it can be very difficult for them to communicate. And it's of course difficult for us. Mm-hmm. I think anybody can do it. The secret to the whole thing is really simple. It's attention and intention. If you have razor sharp attention on something and you have a strong will intention to do something, you're going to make it happen one way or the other. And if you talk to athletes, they say, athletes say the same thing. When you go up to bat in baseball, you have your focused attention and you have the intention of hitting the ball. You're already visualizing it. You're making it happen. Now, 7 times out of 10, you might not be successful, but 3 times out of 10, you will. Mm-hmm. And it's just like that with the psychic world. You don't always make a connection. And it's not always a perfect connection. Like one time there was a lady that I met, and I don't do it for a living. I don't charge anybody for psychic, connections, mediumship. Yeah. But this lady said, "Hey, can you get a hold of my father?" And I said, "Sure, I'll do it." And so I was able to make a connection, and I gave her the information, and she said, "Well, yeah, you got it right that that he liked spaghetti, and that he had a knife collection, and that I can't remember all the different things, but you got it wrong. You got his middle name wrong, and you didn't mention this other thing." And I'm thinking, lady, I just got like 5 out of 10 things. I got 5 things maybe not quite right, but 5 things right. I'm talking to a dead person. Do you understand what's going on here? This is pretty amazing. But I think what people expect is perfection. And the one thing you learn is it's not the goal with helping people reach their loved ones is not to be right, but to be helpful. Okay. So it's not like you're looking at a scorecard and say, I get 50%, I get 75% right, hit rate or whatever. It's, are you helpful to that person? Does it provide closure for them? Do you provide any kind of hint of life beyond life? And if you do that, you've done your job, the way I look at it.
I suppose they're looking for some sort of validation.
Yes.
And I'm sure everybody looks at this with a skeptical eye. So it's
sure.
Okay, 50%. Yeah. Okay, is this a parlor trick or is this real?
Yeah.
I assume that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and I understand skepticism, and the skepticism ends when the experience happens. It doesn't end abruptly, but it's like, wait a second, that just happened. Okay, well, maybe it's an illusion. Maybe I was thinking of something else, and then it happens again, and okay, no, I think that is a real thing. So, I mean, like I said, I'm still skeptical about certain things. I have a very open mind, but I still keep that. I think it's healthy to be skeptical, but once you've had an experience, a very clear experience, and it's repeated, and you've had it over and over, then you accept it. You have a belief based on that. And then once you have a belief, it opens you up to other experiences, because if you close your mind, you're not going to have any experience, because things could be happening all the time, but you just don't accept it.
Sure.
So I think that's, the one thing I tell people who are skeptical, I say, have you ever felt like somebody was staring at you? And almost everybody's had that feeling. It's like,
right. Sure.
And then you turn around and sure enough, somebody's staring at you. That is paranormal. How in the heck did you know that? That is a sixth sense, and that everybody's had that experience. So, and you just try to cultivate that if you want to. Not everybody wants to, but anybody can get more of that if they wanted to.
So this is you said this is something that everybody can do. Mm-hmm. And it just takes some focus and attention, mm-hmm. and intention. the biggest thing or not the biggest thing, but the question in my mind is, okay, what precautions do you need to take? I mean, the bad things that can happen,
Yeah.
I'm sure are plenty.
Yeah.
And in order to start dabbling in this safely, what precautions is somebody just starting out take in order to protect themselves?
Yeah. I've had a lot of negative experiences, and you can learn, people can learn from and that's, if they read my books, they'll see that. But the main thing is that find somebody you can trust that is a legitimate person, not there's charlatans out there everywhere, just like in anything, but with
Right.
this especially. So find somebody you can trust who's had real experiences, and then have them help you. And start off with small steps. Don't go from, wow, this is kind of cool, I think I will go to this location where there's been known demonic possessions, I think I'll go there. No, don't go there. I don't go there because I don't want to take a chance like that.
Right.
I don't want that. I've had those experiences, and by accident actually, and it's very real, and it's too powerful, it's too negative, and it leads, you can be physically hurt, not just psychically and mentally hurt, but you can be physically hurt, and I have been physically hurt. So you have to be very careful. I think it's good to have some kind of spirituality in place, some kind of belief system. It doesn't matter what it is. Maybe it's an earth thing, I love the earth, Mother Earth, protect, whatever, or
Sure.
God, or whatever, Jesus, have some kind of religious thing if that helps, and you need that, and then get in contact with somebody who is trusted, that is trustworthy, and have them teach you a few things, and then start off very slow. I would avoid Ouija boards. I avoid anything that I don't have control over. A Ouija board, you don't know where it comes from, you don't know who has handled it, you don't know what the intention was. Maybe it was a negative intent, maybe it's nothing, but it could be bad. So I don't dabble with those things. I don't take a chance with that, and I'm very, very careful. Like I said, I put up protection all the time, and I've had some negative experiences that kind of cautionary tales that I deal with in the book. I might talk about some bad things that have happened. So that'd be my advice. Start slow, be careful, find a trusted friend or somebody who can show you a few things, and just start from there. And don't put yourself into a very, like some of these shows are great. My son and I, we watch all the paranormal shows because it's just fun,
Sure.
And some of it's very theatrical. They're doing a lot of it for the TV show, but there is a reality behind it too. It's just that the reality is often not as dramatic. It's not, right. They could be, but very rarely. So that doesn't make for good television to say, okay, we watched this ball move 5 centimeters over 24 hours. Who's going to, nobody's going to stand still for that. Although it moved with somebody's mind or some entity, whatever, but
sure.
It's not that exciting. So they're expecting Harry Potter magic, they're kind of jaded that way.
So one of my daughters watches a lot of that type of stuff. And when I watch it, it doesn't seem, like you said, it almost seems set up or contrived, or just kind of they explore, it's good from a historical perspective. They give you the background of the building they're going to go into, and these things happened, and this is what other people have experienced, and then they go in with their night vision and all their technical gadgets, and something's going to happen, and when it does, I think they overreact a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's the drama of the show and everything else, but
that's how they sell it.
Yeah, you kind of look at it and you go, did this really happen, or is this some sort of a script? Kind of like the Blair Witch Project, which everybody thought, oh my gosh, look at this documentary, and it was just some college kids screwing around out in the forest,
Yeah.
But
a fake documentary or whatever you call that.
Yeah.
And it's, those I enjoy those shows, and they're very entertaining, but we have to realize that they are for entertainment primarily. But even if only 1% is real, that's still that's hard to believe. It's and I think there at least 1% is real of these places. I've been to haunted locations, and if you don't mind, I'll tell a story. You want me to tell one of the scariest experiences I've had in this regard?
Yeah, go for it.
It was in Chicago. It was that same trip where this TV producer wanted me to come out. The graveyard experience was kind of a funny, pleasant experience, but this other one, he took me to the south side of Chicago, and we parked in an Aldi's parking lot. Very poor neighborhood, just scary looking neighborhood, old neighborhood. So I parked in the Aldi's parking lot. I got out, and immediately, I was the setup to this is I'm trying to impress this guy so I can be on his show, which is a bad premise, because I'm not doing all the protections I need to do, my usual very slow, methodical protection. Sure. So I walk out of the car, and I got my radar dish open, and it's like, let's see what's going on here. I'm trying to impress this guy. And immediately I see like 1880s, 1890s Chicago. I see a vision of all these horse and buggies and people in dark clothing scurrying about. They're all ignoring me, right? In my mind's eye, I'm seeing this, except this one man standing still, and he's staring at me. And he has a bowler hat. He has one of those curly mustaches, dark eyes, dark overcoat, and he's just standing there staring at me. He's probably about 50 feet away, maybe 40 feet away. So he kind of gave me the creeps. It's like, what's going on here? And I'm explaining this to the guy.
Right.
He's got me mic'd up, but he hasn't got his camera ready yet, right? Okay. So that vision goes away, and I said, I'm going to look around. So I went into the alleyway that connects the Aldi's to the post office across the street, this old post office, by the elevated train tracks, right? So I'm walking in this alley, and I decided to go up to this old tree that was kind of grown into this light pole. It looked like it had been there forever. So I thought, this is a good thing. I like to touch old things to see if I can pick up on anything. I forgot what they call it. There's a special name for that. But anyway, I think it retains energy and memories. So I go up to touch this tree, and immediately as I reach for the tree, I'm tackled into the ground and driven into the ground. It's like I just got hit by an NFL linebacker and driven into the ground. I injured my knee and my left knee and my left foot, and I was being held down, but there was nobody there. It just happened. It was a force, like unbelievable force. And I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", 260. So it takes a lot to, knock me down like that. The worst part of it, Jeff, was that I felt helpless and hopeless. And I started to see all this suffering, like under the ground. I saw these men, women, and children all being tortured and dismembered. And it was so horrible. It was like the, lowest level of hell or something. It was just awful. And I felt like giving up. And then all of a sudden I go, wait a second. No, I'm a strong person. I'm going to get up. So I got up. And the guy comes running with the camera, and he said, I couldn't get the camera on yet, but what's going on? And I told him, and then he said, I'm feeling weird. He's like vibrating. I said, yeah, I mean, there's something wrong with this place. We got to get out of here. And mind you, the only thing he told me before we got there was this was a dark place. He didn't tell me anything else. So I said, let's get out of here. I can't be here anymore. So we got in, we packed up the equipment, got into the car, drove away. And I said, don't ever, send me to a place like that again. This is really bad. I said, what happened here? And he said, well, this was the site of the murder hotel. Dr. H.H. Holmes was America's first serial killer.
Right.
And he set up this murder hotel just before the Chicago World's Fair in the 1890s, I guess, or I think it was 1890s. And he murdered over 300 people, tortured them, dismembered them in the basement and chambers underneath his hotel, which is what I was seeing when I was being driven into the ground. And I don't know if it was the demonic entity that caused him to do the things, or it was him, the evil spirit of him himself, or both. But that was the first time I had ever been physically injured. And that's a cautionary tale for people to not play around with this stuff. You see these shows and they go in there and they say, well, there's a demonic entity in here and it's scratching people. And I'm thinking, I'm not going there, not on purpose. I'm not going in there. I believe it already. You don't need to come and scratch me to know you're real. I know, I just, don't want to go in there. So, but I got ambushed, it's kind of like a psychic ambush. So
Wow.
and it was driven by hubris. You know, I thought I'm going to impress this guy. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I'm a hotshot psychic. You know, no. You think you need like a team in there with all the protection you can imagine, and probably an old priest and a young priest, and you know anything to help. And even then, I think somebody would get hurt. It was a bad place,
Yeah.
a really bad place. Yeah.
Yeah. So he takes a psychic to the murder hotel in Chicago.
Yeah, to test my ability without telling me, yeah, what it was, and I had no idea.
What can you
Other
see?
than it was a bad neighborhood. That's all I could see.
Jesus.
Yeah. It was the neighborhood was scary in and of itself, you know, even
Right.
without that history.
Well, I mean, you can walk into places or, you know, down the street and it just doesn't feel right. You know,
Right.
even if you have no abilities at all.
Yeah.
And that little voice is saying, yeah, maybe, dude, you should get out of here.
Yeah.
Run, don't
Listen to
walk.
your gut. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and you always kind of wonder, did something happen here or not? I mean, it's always kind of in the back of your head, that little voice or whatever, and especially a place like that, you know. Or
Yeah.
and I'm sure everybody that's there feels it in
Yeah.
some sense.
Well, that's what he pointed out as we were driving away. He said, "Look at all the people here. Do they look happy?" I said, "Not at all." And it's not just because they're poor and you know destitute or whatever, but this is just there's a negative vibe here.
Sure.
And there's probably never, you know, going to be any happiness there because of all the misery that was there.
Right.
And yeah, so that was a very interesting experience. I'm glad I had the experience. Actually, when I came back and I went to teach my paranormal class a couple nights later, I have a couple of practicing psychics that were in the class. And when I walked in, they go, you know, they were like, what's going on? And I was telling them I just got back from Chicago and had this bad experience. And all of a sudden, one lady got up and she ran outside, and I went to check on her because I didn't know what was going on. So I went outside and she said, "Dude, you got some kind of, you know, attachment or something because it's making me sick. It's making me physically sick." It was that power, and I know I felt funny after I got home, like I was half dazed or something. And so I figured I knew this lady who was a shaman in the Peruvian tradition. She'd been trained in Peru as a shaman.
Okay.
And I went to her and I said, "Could you do a spiritual cleansing?" She said, "Sure, I'll do it." And sure enough, there was some kind of residual attachments to me. And I walked in there feeling really heavy and kind of sad. And when I walked out, it was like I was walking on air. You know, and for like a month after that, it felt really great. Like there was such a difference between the heavy weight of what had happened and what I felt like after. So yeah, so it's nothing to fool around with this stuff. If you don't understand it, you're a rookie. You don't, even if you're an experienced person, you don't want to go in there alone without protection. And yeah, don't let your pride get in the way.
Yeah. I think it's, you know, it's even scarier that it followed you. It followed you home from Chicago to California.
It attached it, some element of it attached to me.
You, yeah.
Or it made it easier for other things to attach to me, because I think what they do is they kind of weaken you. And then it's like your immune system, your psychic immune system gets compromised. So then these other opportunists, you know, oh, okay, I'm going to glom onto, and maybe they're not necessarily evil, but they're just energy sucking things, you know.
Sure.
And that can happen. I think it's good to have a kind of a spiritual cleanse, and people can do it different ways. Some people go to church, some people pray, some people go to a shaman, you know, whatever your tradition is. I think it's good for you to, you know, just like you want to cleanse your body, you know, take a shower or eat healthy or something, you got to do that psychically too.
Sure. That, you know, that is very interesting and terrifying at the same time. You know, it's you know, that type of stuff always, especially, you know, when you're talking about people that are writing books, fantasy and fiction, you know, that's something that they always kind of dabble in, and they, you know, they try and get it right. I mean, everybody, you know, tries to, you know, this is the type of experience I had, or, you know, this is how this would work, or, you know, some sort of a haunting and horror or whatever. Have you ever read a book like that and just went, it's nothing like that, dude. It's not even close.
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes you can tell that maybe the person hasn't had a lot of experiences, but other times, and this goes for movies too, you just watch something, you go, the person that wrote this has had some real experiences, um, or that wrote this book or wrote this screenplay or whatever. But other times, it's just manufactured. It's a retread of something else or whatever.
Sure.
There isn't, you don't feel the heart and soul behind it. But other times, yeah, you can tell. You can tell if you've had a lot of these experiences, which I've had. You can kind of tell when somebody is just trying to make it look scary, and when it really is, there's something deeper at a deeper psychological level that really gets to it. It's kind of a primal thing,
Sure.
I think with human beings.
So what movie would stick out in your mind as being something that correctly portrays or written by somebody who's had these types of experiences?
Some of the demonic possession things are pretty scary. Which was the one? Well, of course, there's The Exorcist, which is the first one I remember watching when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't even watch it. I mean, I was like, I was holding my, hands against my face. So, any kind of demonic possession stuff, it strikes at that primal kind of fear that we have. Some of the alien stuff is pretty scary to me too, I think, because it's not that it's scary, it's just disturbing,
Mm-hmm.
and because there is so much that we don't know, that it strikes something that there is something wrong there that we're not quite acknowledging, but it's out there. And almost every paranormal type movie, there's some element of it that I can relate to. Kind of like I used to work in prisons, so I watch all prison movies, and I have the same kind of thing. I watch it and I go,
sure,
yeah, that's what it's like, or no, that's exaggerated. But I have to watch it. So I feel compelled to watch these things,
right,
just to pick up on what I think people, what they might have actually experienced. I think the guy who did, what's that Bruce Willis one?
Sixth Sense.
Yeah. Is that the one with the kid, I See Dead People?
Yep.
Yeah. What's his name? M. Night
Shyamalan or Shyamalan.
Yeah. He's had some experiences, I can tell.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not making all that up. Of course, you might not say that, maybe you don't want to go down that road, but you can tell from the experiences that the way he's telling the story, the way that he tells the story, he's had some experiences. So the same way I think that, talking about alien stuff, I think Gene Roddenberry was tapping into something well beyond what people knew at that time. If you look at the stuff that has happened since,
oh yeah,
it's pretty amazing, that he predicted or foreshadowed all that stuff.
Not only his predictive nature of his of the show itself, but also the social injustices that he tried to attack with his creation, where it was truly, I mean, it became kind of a cult classic at one point in time, because the television show wasn't overly successful until later on, but
right,
he really did some amazing things with that, regardless of whether he was a pain in the ass to deal with or not. He really went after things, and he did it his way, and he was right about a lot of things, or at least the direction that things were going. Yep.
I think he tapped into I think I don't know if he had experiences himself, or if he somehow got some kind of download or something, but I think something happened where he made a connection to what I call the signal line, which is where, maybe I'll explain that.
Okay.
I think the spirit world, the alien world, and the quantum world, the world of quantum physics, is all the same thing. Oh. I think that is the common denominator. I think, because like when you hear people tell ghost stories, oh, the ghost appeared out of nowhere and then it dematerialized, right? Or the ghost passed through a wall or passed through a ceiling or a door. Mm-hmm. And then you hear people who have had abduction experiences. The alien materialized and then dematerialized. The alien was, went through a wall, went through the ceiling, brought me through the window, as if I was just particulate matter. I was able to go through actual matter. I was vibrating at a different frequency or whatever. And then you read about quantum physics, and I'm not a physicist, but I've read about it and I thought, man, this makes sense to me, because in the quantum world, the subatomic world, for one thing, time is not what we have now. You know, it
Right.
goes forwards and backwards, and it's just all happening at the same time. And it doesn't matter how far away you are from something. Like Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. How one thing somewhere and something else far, far away, maybe a galaxy away, can affect each other instantaneously. And I've had paranormal experiences that mimic that. Like my brother, who was in Vietnam, in Quang Tri, South Vietnam, in a firefight, being rocketed, thought he was going to die, was crying for his mother, which is what a lot of guys do in the military when they know they're going to die. That's what you do, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's a horrible thing, but it's a very, you know, that's what happens. At the same time, we learned this later, because I did, you know, we checked. My mom woke up in our home in Seattle and said, "Your brother's in trouble. He's calling for me. He's in trouble." And she woke up my dad and me, and we go, "Mom, what's wrong?" "I heard your brother, and your brother is in trouble. We need to help him." I said, "Mom, he's in South Vietnam. He's like half a world away. How could you know that?" And well, I knew how she could know that. It was that connection. It didn't matter what the distance is. The connection was made. And we checked it later when my brother called. He was a radio operator, so he made a Mars call connection to us. And I asked him, I said, "Mom had this experience, you know, on this day at this time." And then we figured it out with the time difference. It was exactly at the same time, same day that he was being in this rocket attack. So, and I've asked other vets, and they said that's pretty common, actually, that happens, that kind of connection. Usually it's a very strong connection to your mother kind of a thing, which, you know, transcends so much. But how do you explain that? Radio signals can't travel like that. You know, this is a quantum connection, an entangled universe, as it's called.
Sure.
And so I think that's what explains, I think, a lot in terms of how ghosts operate, how aliens operate. You know, it's not always just a nuts and bolts operation, you know, like in the old 50s alien movies, you know, where this clunky metallic thing comes down, and, you know, that kind of thing. I think it's as much psychological and spiritual and as it is in, you know, involving the quantum world of materializing and dematerializing. I have a friend of mine who, after I was on that same Coast to Coast AM show, he was a physicist. He ran he was an electrical engineer, and he ran a psychic research lab at Stanford in the 70s. Okay. And his name is Ed Young.
Okay.
And Ed told me, he said, it's really simple. Matter can vibrate in and out of dimensions.
Yeah, it sounds really simple.
It sounds really simple. How can that happen, Ed? And he said, that's really what's happening. So these entities, whether they're, you know, they vibrate into our reality, and then they can vibrate out of that, and they can bring you with them, I guess, if they want to. And so it all seems to make sense to me. And I asked my friend Gene once, I said, you know, tell me something about the aliens. And he, in his, you know, he always tries to be very, he was a very upbeat guy. He said, "Hey, we are the aliens." And I've been trying to figure it out ever since. What does that mean? And I said, does that mean we, like you guys in the spirit world, are the aliens, or all of us are, or we're connected, or we're related, or, you know? And he said all of those things, which is pretty wild when you think about it. And
that is wild.
Yeah. And speaking of a Montana connection, there's actually a guy at Montana Tech, a professor there, who wrote a book called Identified Flying Objects. I forgot his name right now, but anyway. And his theory is that aliens are really future humans who are traveling back in time, which is a wild idea, but it's kind of cool.
When you take that and you put it in a quantum perspective, that's completely possible.
It seems to me that it is. And he's just, I mean, he's not a you know, paranormal guy in any other respect, except he has this one book, and he goes around on the circuit talking about this. And I communicated with him. I corresponded with him. I actually interviewed him when I had a radio show a while ago. and really cool guy. And it's very plausible. And my theory is that I think the aliens are really a combination. I think it could be future humans coming back. I think there are other alien species that are contacting us and have for quite a while. I think it's a combination. And when I do my spirit walks and do my meditation, my meditative walks, I've asked those questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, why are they here? You say they're here. Why are they here? And I was told, well, you're a historian. Why did people explore the New World? Oh, okay. Well, there were missionaries, there were conquistadors, there were merchants, there were military people.
Mm-hmm.
They all had different motivations,
Right.
but they all came. Well, could it be the same for the extraterrestrials? Maybe some are good, some are not so good, some are kind of neutral. They all have different agendas or different motivations.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have good experiences with these entities, some have negative experiences. Maybe that explains it. I don't know. I feel like all of us have a little piece of the puzzle, and nobody has. If anybody tells you, "Oh, I understand it all," I can come up with a chart and tell you all this. That I don't. I think we all have a piece of the puzzle, and we're trying to figure it out. That's where I'm at, where I'm coming from.
You know what? I like that. That kind of, not that I put stuff together all that well, but the tying everything that you've said into the quantum world, and just kind of hurry. I'm kind of hurried in my thinking, but with what I've read, and obviously I'm not a scientist. I'm just a dumb author writing lies down for hopefully people to buy. But that makes sense to me. I'm actually, tonight when I start my little research page, I'm probably going to take that time and look up what you're talking about. I've written down the books and some of the things that you've said, and it's like, that makes a lot of sense. It does. I mean, from a theoretical position,
Mm-hmm.
the vibrations and the quantum, and with the paranormal and the aliens, and it's all one big. It's all the same thing. That makes sense. It just it just depends on what you're tuned into.
Yeah. And I think people see what they want to see, or they see what they're able to comprehend. And so some people will see nuts and bolts flying saucers, others will have these mystical spiritual experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read some of the literature from contact in the 1800s, people described they didn't say they were alien spacecraft, but they said a giant sailing ship in the sky. That was their reference. They're not going to be able to describe something that we are sophisticated enough today to describe. And ancient people, they saw a giant wheel, like in Ezekiel, right? In the Bible, this giant wheel in the sky, right? So I think whatever reference point you have, that's how you're going to comprehend it. And if it's beyond your comprehension, it can literally kind of blow your mind. So some people just don't want to accept it. They just, and this happens with people who have had alien contact experience, especially tandem experiences. When you have two people who have this encounter, almost inevitably, one of them will accept it and want to deal with it and try to understand it. The other one will totally ignore it and do everything they can to bury it. Sure. And oftentimes the relationship suffers. If it's a husband and wife, they separate. If it's two friends, they separate and they don't talk to each other anymore. I had that experience with I call him Ernie. We had an experience, and he doesn't want to deal with it at all. In fact, he's hostile about it. And when I told him I was writing a book about it, he got very angry. He said, "You're not going to use my name." And I said, "That's fine." So that's why I call him Ernie. But he was really mad that I even brought it up. Huh. But then at the end, and then he's cut off all communications. That's like 2 or 3 years ago. 2 years ago. I haven't heard from him since I brought it up. And he was an old friend of mine from high school, and we had on and off been in contact. And I told him, he denied it and all that. And then I said, okay, well, I'm going to write the book. And then he came back with this weird email where he said, I do have some memories of that event. And I remember that they spoke to me and they told me, this guy's a squealer. You think he had never seen pincers before. You know, that word pincers just kind of sends fright into you, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, maybe I'm mad at you because you allowed me to be abducted. And then I thought, wow, okay, this is really interesting. And then he cut off all communication. I can't raise anything from him. So after that, and when I was writing the story, I remembered I wrote some poems because it was based on a trip we took in 1977. And it took place in Black Pine Peak in the Idaho wilderness. Okay. It was we went on this dirt road, parked on the side of the road, and we had these weird, what I describe as an alien abduction contact experience in the book. And so I went back and I looked at the poems I'd written after our trip in 1977. And I have one poem called I Sold Out to the Aliens. And the whole poem is about how I did their bidding. And then towards the end of the poem, I wrote about pincers. And I didn't even remember that I'd written about that. And then he had just mentioned that, and now I had mentioned it in this poem that I wrote in 1977, and it gave me a chill. It was like, oh my God, I got some like historical evidence. It's a poem, you know, based on what had happened. And then his admission, and then his denial, and then his cutting off of my, you know, contact with me, and then my memories. And also I did hypnotic regression with Yvonne Smith, who's a world-renowned hypnotic therapist. And so I kind of pieced it all together, the story all together from these different sources. And so that's in the book, Timeless Trinity. So there's a little bit of everything in these books for, you know, people who like ghost stories, people who like alien stuff, people who like all that. It's all in there.
And I would suggest anybody that's interested in this type of stuff to buy all three of your books.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And the last one's also an audio book. So for those audio book people, I did a audio recording, which is a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be, actually. Yeah. I went to a recording studio and did it. It took a long time, and man, your voice gives out. Mm-hmm. You know, you do a lot of podcasts, and at a certain point, your voice gives out, and you're sitting there, even if you think, well, I'm going to read my own book, that's going to be so cool. It's like, after a while, you can't even stand it anymore. I don't want to read this anymore. This is trash. How can I even read? You know? Exactly. No, you don't think that, but you just get tired of it, you know.
And you're trying to enunciate something that you typed like 4 or 5 times, and all of a sudden you have to read it 14 times to get it right.
Yeah, exactly. You would think you could say the words you've written, but not always.
Not always.
Like, that's an odd phrase. Why'd they write it that way? That's ridiculous.
All right. Well, just to wrap this up, I want to mention one more time. Next week on October 28th, and we'll have all the links, you're going to your premiere of Tough Trip Through Hell. Yeah, it's the world premiere Streamplay, comedy, dramatic Western. It'll be fun for everybody. It's going to be episodic, so it'll be there are 5 episodes. The first episode is Wednesday, the 28th of October, 7 p.m. Pacific. YouTube Live, on Twitch, also Facebook Live. And and if, those of you that were touched by the story about David, it would make him really happy to have people watch it. And then, like you said, maybe you'll put some links to his books up there too. And that would be kind of a way to pay tribute to this wonderful man whose time on this earth is limited at this point. Yep, absolutely. And I will put those links up, and I will put them to every digital medium that I have to see if we can't drum up some more support for him. I appreciate that. Absolutely. It's been an incredibly interesting and enlightening conversation with you, Bruce. I appreciate your time. Oh, thank you, Jeff. I've enjoyed it. Like I said, I might be, I shouldn't say might. I'm probably going to email you some questions here at some point in time. Sure. That, like I said, you've got my mind rolling here. So, okay. That's all right. Cool. Yeah. And I will have your website, BruceOlasolheim.com.
Mhm.
I'll put those links down there and your social media links and also links to your books.
Yep.
And the last thing I want to do is I want to thank everybody for listening to the DIY Writer podcast. And if you'd be so kind, please subscribe or follow, depending on what medium you're reading or watching or listening to this. Sorry. On YouTube, iTunes, Stitch, and Spotify.
Mhm.
But this is Jeff Bacon signing off. I hope you all have a wonderful day.